Here I want to simply introduce you to the camera calibration panel. And I want to start off by saying that one of the things that you may notice that when you process an image in a previous version of Lightroom, and when you open that image in Lightroom 3, you'll notice there's a little warning icon. In order to update the photograph, you can simply click on this icon, or another technique that you can use is to navigate to the camera calibration panel. Here you'll see the current process version, in this case 2003. Well, to update this to the most recent version, all that we need to do is to click on this menu and then choose 2010, which is the current process version. This will then update the photograph, which in turn will help us take advantage of all of the new strength in Lightroom 3. Another reason why we might want to use the camera calibration panel is to take advantage of different types of profiles. Here you can see the current profile that I'm using is Camera Standard. Well, if you click on this menu, you'll notice that there are a huge range of different profiles. We could compare this with Adobe Camera Raw 4.4. Now there we have a completely different and distinct look. And we can go through these various options and just make some compare and contrast views here and just evaluate the way that our image will be displayed. And what these profiles will seek to do is to give us a good starting point for our photographs. Certain profiles we'll notice won't look good with some images, and then with others they may look good. And a lot of times you'll need to experiment and make one selection and then perhaps compare it with another. Well, now here we can see that the neutral option is just too neutral. It's not very visually interesting, and the detail on the beard is a little bit lost there. So let's try to find something different, say for example, like Adobe Standard. Now that just gives a little bit more life to the image. Or we could choose something where perhaps we bring in a little bit more saturation and contrast like Camera Standard. Well, just for the sake of experimentation, let's press the G key here to go back to the grid view. Next, I'm going to navigate to another folder, and here I'm going to go ahead and select this folder, Surf Sponsor. Then I'll select one of these images and press the D key to go to the Develop module. Now currently with this image you can see the profile process version is current and the profile is Adobe Standard. Well, what I want from this image is something a little bit more. So here I'll go ahead and choose one of these other options like Landscape, where I get a little bit more of that yellow and also those color saturations that look really nice. I'll also try out Camera Portrait. Well, here I think the image is a little bit too red. So I'm just going to experiment and see if I can find one that I think looks good. And in my opinion, I really like this Camera Landscape. Now let's compare that. Here we have Camera Landscape and then compared to Adobe Standard. One great way to start to make comparisons between the different profiles is by using virtual copies. Let me show you what I mean. Well, what we can do is press Command apostrophe on a Mac, Control apostrophe on Windows. And then we can start off with the original file by clicking in it. And here's the master photo. In this case, I'll leave this on Adobe Standard. Next, I'll click on the other image over here, and with this image, I'll go ahead and choose another option. Say, for example, like Camera Standard. Now when I have that, or perhaps something even more like Camera Landscape, I can now see the difference. I can click back and forth between these two images in order to evaluate these. I can also, on the virtual copy, press the backslash key. Here's that before and then after. Sometimes by working with virtual copies, it can be a quick way to compare and contrast the results of different profiles. Alright, well let's look at one more image. Once again, I'll press the G key to go to the grid view mode. Next, I'm going to navigate to the crop folder. And here in the crop folder, I'm going to select the first image, which is titled Baja.cr2. Next, let's press the D key to go to the Develop module. Now so far, one of the things that I've seen is that I've liked certain profiles and not others. In particular, I found that Camera Portrait was just too red. Well, let's go ahead and try that one out here on this image. Well, when I do that on this photograph, I all of a sudden discover that I kind of like the reds that it brings out here. Let's compare and contrast. Here I'll press the backslash key. There's before, a little bit more washed out, and then after with some nice warm tones, yellows and reds and color saturation. And what we want to do is experiment with different profiles with different types of photographs. And what these profiles can do is they can act as a starting point for the rest of our processing. This can bring an image to a certain spot from which then we can continue to process and modify the photograph.